All right, welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Sports Daily. Glad to be here with you. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers producing. We got a big show coming for you today. We've got Dan Israel coming up at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock, in 1 hour from now, to talk about the Chiefs as we get off of the bye week and ready for a big-time showdown with the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football next week. We've got Monday Night Football from last night to talk about. Certainly an interesting game as it pertains to the Chiefs. Also coming up in the next hour, our regular Monday visit moves to today with our KU insider, Shreyas Laddha. Plenty to get to. Football and hoops tonight with the Big Champions Classic showdown with Kentucky. KU, of course, remember, has a little work to do now to reclaim that all-time wins lead head-to-head against Kentucky. Will certainly help them do that. The IHOP hotline is open for you at 869-1240. IHOP, where through November 26th, kids eat free every day from 4 to 10 with the purchase of an adult entree. We can get you on that IHOP hotline. Calls will be great in the first hour. You can also leave your comments on our video stream, which you'll find on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch. We'll have giveaways today, movie tickets. We may give away 2 pairs of tickets to the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, for a Thursday night, November 16th. That's this Thursday. Sneak preview at Boulevard Theaters in Town West Square. And we'll also give away some HTO iced tea and coffee. A lot to get to today. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good. I'd like to take this time to offer my sincere condolences to Bills fans everywhere after last night. I feel bad for you. It was kind of funny, though, to watch. But yeah, I mean, offer sincere condolences to them.
Yeah, we'll get to K-State basketball. They looked good, and you led us down this road. So let's start with Monday Night Football. Look, I know the ending was crazy, right? And the penalty and everything gave Denver the second chance, and that's but Denver was winning a lot of that game,
yeah.
Right? Like Denver, I thought, controlled the game. And as I look at this, and everybody's going to focus on the Bills and Josh Allen, who continues to struggle a little bit, that was a bad matchup for Buffalo because Diggs and Surtain, right? You can sort of take him out a little bit, and then Buffalo's going to be in real trouble. I always thought this was a bad matchup for Buffalo. Denver goes on the road. I think, Tommy, as everyone's going to focus on the Bills, though, I think this is more about Denver. Denver's playing much, much better now. And it started when they showed they could beat the Chiefs. They now have beaten the Chiefs. They beat the Bills. Russell Wilson is playing within, the offense. They're finally running the ball and committing to the run with Javonte Williams, which they should have done now for 2.5 years. And, they've got enough in the passing game to keep people honest. I mean, Russell Wilson was 24 of 29. They're not pushing it down the field, but they're efficient. And they're playing good defense finally, which was their problem early in the year. I thought last night was more about Denver than it was about Buffalo. Buffalo just did what they've been doing now for the past few weeks, which is struggling through all the injuries they've had.
No, I think it's more about Buffalo. I mean, I think you can give credit to Denver and what they were able to do. But I think the story is more about Buffalo. And, the fact that this has been a consistent trend for them for a while, making mistakes. Josh Allen turning the ball over far too much, making questionable decisions, penalties, turnovers, all of that. It makes me wonder if that window of opportunity for Buffalo is coming to a close. So I think that knowing that, and I think having that conversation makes it more about Buffalo. I can give credit to Denver. They have looked better over the last few weeks, but in my mind, this is more about Buffalo.
But this has been the same story with Buffalo now for 6 weeks. That's why I say, Denver's the surprise here. Denver is the team that's coming on all of a sudden. Buffalo's doing what it's been doing for 6 weeks since they've had, since the injuries started piling up on them. I don't know if I'm ready to I don't know that anything's going to happen this season that makes me think their window is closed. I do think that they need to do more reevaluating.
I think it's closing.
But again,
I'm not sure it's closed,
might be.
But I think it's closing.
It might be closing, but they have been within some unlucky things happening of reaching Super Bowls, right? It's not like they get to these games against the Chiefs or whatever in the playoffs and they just totally get smashed and outplayed. That didn't happen, right? They had the Mahomes, that crazy game we all remember, right, in the playoffs. And Mahomes, how many seconds was it? 16 seconds or whatever.
13 seconds.
Yeah. So it's not they're different than let's say the Cowboys, who look great and then just get smashed or whatever in the playoffs. Buffalo's closer than that. Now, this year they've got all the injuries. Allen's not playing particularly well and hasn't been. I think the level of concern sort of circulates around Josh Allen as much as it does as to the team as a whole, because they have had a lot of injuries that they've been trying to deal with.
Look, here's why I think their window is closing if they don't turn it around soon. Their defense is, number one, injured, but number two, pretty old. Like, they're a pretty old defense.
Yeah.
They also don't have a lot of weapons outside of Steph Diggs. I know they've got Gabe Davis, but I can't imagine, Steph Diggs, there was some controversy with him at the beginning of the season about whether or not he was wanting to return to Buffalo. I mean, is he on his way out? His brother Trayvon tweeted last night that Steph's got to get out of there, got to get out of Buffalo. Like, I think that there's going to be some drama with that moving forward.
Trade deadline's passed.
I know, but I think maybe after this season, that sort of thing. They really made a mistake, I think, last night in not leaning more on James Cook. I don't know why they're giving 49-year-old Latavius Murray carries. I'm exaggerating there on his age, but James Cook is the running back there, and I don't know why they hesitate in giving him more carries. I just think that, and then of course you add in the bad decision making from Josh Allen. It makes me wonder if all of those things combined, that's why I say that window might be closing.
Let me read you their schedule the rest of the way, Tommy. Jets, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins.
Good luck with that.
There's one on there that you're like, oh, that's a win. It's Patriots.
Yep.
That's it. Everything else.
The Patriots beat them earlier this season.
Yeah, I know, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's one on there where you feel like, okay, they should be fine.
Yeah.
Jets, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Dolphins remain on their schedule, and they're 5-5. They're a long shot at this point to make the postseason.
Well, I'll tell you right now that I was looking at the playoff picture. The Gardner Minshew-led Indianapolis Colts have a better percentage chance of making the playoffs than the Buffalo Bills do right now.
Yeah,
100%.
It's because of who they play. But now I will say that, and this is sort of a moment for Josh Allen in his career, because at their best, Buffalo could win every one of those games, right? But they're not at their best right now, and he's not at his best. And it's probably time for him to take the level of criticism that others get for not taking care of the ball, a la Dak Prescott a year ago, right? Plenty of guys. There's plenty of examples. Like, it's time now for Josh Allen to sort of prove it at this adversity. He's shown us what he can be, but he's showing us now perhaps the floor of his career, and he's got to get it turned around. He's got to shoulder this. He's got to get control of whatever's happening with Steph Diggs. You know what? Sometimes you got to deal with star players. Patrick Mahomes had it with Tyreek Hill. You got to deal with star players, and you got to keep them happy. And he's going to have to he's already done it once. He's going to have to do it again with Steph Diggs, because they're not going anywhere without Steph Diggs. I do think, like, the future for them too, I agree with you. Like, the future is not nearly as bright in Buffalo as it is in Kansas City, as it is in Cincinnati. Maybe you put Jacksonville there. I'm not quite sold on that just yet. Houston is a young ascending team. Pittsburgh is a young ascending team. Baltimore's there. Like, you think about the futures of some of these teams, and Buffalo's arrow has certainly pointed the other direction. It's just like, how long can they stretch that out a little bit? And can Josh Allen get back to himself? Because, again, like, that's what's going to be curious about Buffalo. Buffalo's the kind of team where they can come back from this and seriously beat everybody the rest of the way. I still think that's in their bag of possibilities. Don't think they're going to, but I think they could if they played well. They're just not playing well, and Josh Allen's not playing well, and they have all the injuries, and as you mentioned, they're older. But, man, I look on the other side with Denver, and Sean Payton was ready to be run out of town, like, already when he first got there. And all of a sudden, like, they're not just respectable. They might be decent to good. They might be good. Like, if they play good defense like they have been, finally, which it just wasn't making sense that they weren't, because they brought Joseph back in, their defensive guru, to be the defensive coordinator. It wasn't working. But if they can do that, and they're finally, like, Sean Payton is smart enough to finally realize we got to run the ball. One, to help Russell Wilson. And two, we got a really good running back who's getting healthier every week, and it will support our defense. And that's what they're doing. And it's working. And it worked against the Chiefs now, and it's worked against the Bills. It in theory, sort of worked against the Chiefs even a couple of times, right? Because they were in the other one, even when they lost it. Their schedule down the stretch is also pretty tough, though. And I just wonder if they're going to be able at 4-5 to make any kind of run, because how many losses is the last team? They'd have to win all but 2 or 3 games the rest of the way. That's a tall order. Their schedule is also difficult. The beginning of their season, they're going to look back on and just be very disappointed in it. But, it is what it is now. But they're at least respectable. And if you're a Broncos fan, I think you feel much better about Sean Payton in charge here moving forward in the big picture. And down the stretch here, they're probably going to be in just about every game they play.
Yeah, I think that they can maybe lose 2 more. I don't think they can lose 3 more. At that point, you're finishing 9-8. I don't think you make the playoffs in the loaded AFC and the way that it's all jumbled right now at 9-8. 10-7, maybe. You can maybe sneak into the playoffs as like the last wild card at that point. So you can maybe get away with losing 2 more, but even that's a little bit of a stretch. But, I do think that I'm willing to give the Broncos a little bit of credit. I was ready to bury them earlier this season and, thinking, okay, this is not going to work with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. It's just the marriage is not going to be harmonious long term. And I still don't know if that's the case, but I do think that they have done a good job at figuring out, like you mentioned, leaning on the running game a little bit more. That's, I think, been important for them. I hesitate giving a ton of credit to the Denver defense for last night. I think Josh Allen just made poor decisions. And that's what Josh Allen does quite a bit. Like, he makes these inexplicable throws where you're like, what are you doing, bro? Like, I don't even know what you're looking at this point. So I hesitate giving a ton of credit to the Denver defense for the game last night, but I will say they have played better in the last month or so than they did to start the season, when they gave up 70 points to the Dolphins and all of that, as we all well know. So, I mean, they are clearly trending in the right direction. This was a combination of teams moving in opposite directions, right? Buffalo is trending down. Denver is trending up. I don't think we're going to see either one of these teams in the playoffs when it's all said and done. But it was a fascinating game to watch, one team on the way up and one team on the way down.
And you would have never 4 or 5 weeks ago thought it would be the teams that were headed in either direction.
Did you know, by the way, Josh Allen has thrown an interception in the last 18 straight games? 18 straight games. He's thrown at least one interception.
It's who he is. And look, when we talk about the quarterbacks like that, like are the guys in the NFL, when you talk about Mahomes and Burrow, and when I talk about Herbert, maybe not you as much, and Hurts, like, I'm not sure that Allen's going to stay in that mix. He's got a lot to prove here. Like, I'll give you a crazy one. Who would you rather have for the future, Josh Allen or CJ Stroud?
At this point, probably CJ Stroud.
Stroud, by the way, I forget what it is. It's like leading the league in passing yards and touchdown to interception ratio through 10 games in a season. You know who the other guys are to be able to do that? There's been 3 of them in the history of football, I think. Don't hold me to the fire on this. I'm pretty sure this is the stat. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes. Only guys to ever do that. CJ Stroud's done that in the first 10 games. So sometimes, like, you can pull stats out of anything, but there are times where when you're trying to figure out, like, is this for real here?
Right.
And you look at that kind of stuff. He's also a rookie on a bad team doing it. Those guys were not rookies on bad teams when they did it. It was like 2015, I think, with Brady. It was, I'm pretty sure, a Broncos year for Manning, and then Patrick Mahomes never really was a rookie. But it's crazy. It's crazy. And Allen at one point, this time last year, we were having the conversation of, like, Allen or Mahomes.
Right.
And I'm sorry. Like, I'm not taking him over certainly Mahomes, Burrow, or Herbert for me. But there are other guys now. Like, would I take him over Hurts? Would I take him over CJ Stroud at this point. I don't know. He's got a lot to prove.
And I think the Bills always compensated for, the occasional bad decision from Josh Allen because he threw for so many touchdowns and because
I'm
they were
okay
winning
with
games,
that
right?
style.
Like it was
and they
kind
had a
of
great defense.
It was that Brett Favre gunslinger mentality. Like you got to take the bad with the good. He's going to lead you to wins. He's going to throw far more touchdowns than picks, but you got to kind of live with the bad decisions that he's going to make from time to time. I remember when Josh Allen started his career in the league, that was the big knock on him was he had a big arm,
inaccurate
but he
passer.
was inaccurate and he was going to throw interceptions. And then he sort of overcame that to an extent. You still had some of that rear its ugly head from time to time. But now in the last, season or two, and really, I don't know if you can point it back to the start of it being when the Chiefs knocked him out of the AFC Championship game. From that point on, the bad has started to outweigh the good a little bit. Like he's still throwing for touchdowns, but they're not winning games like they were. And you can point back at critical interceptions at critical times as part of the reason or a large reason why the Bills stand at 5-5 right now.
Yeah, look, he came in as an inaccurate passer, which was the big risk with him, which is, historically the thing that guys don't get better at, and he did. And it was like, well, look out now. And then we started to see all this. I think he can bounce back.
Is it regression? Like, do you think that it's like legitimate permanent regression, or do you think he's going through
permanent is the question?
Phase?
It's for sure regression.
Yeah.
Is it permanent? I don't know. I mean, that's what the rest of this season will tell us probably. But I here's what I also think is that dude is a gamer and his attitude will stay on track. And I would bet that he gets closer to the good than continues as the bad. I would still lean that way. But his ceiling might be higher than anybody but Mahomes, but his floor is certainly lower. And right now I think we're seeing the floor of Josh Allen, and he's got to figure out a way to bounce back from that. And I think that he will. There's going to be some adversity now as they're going to be on the outside looking into the postseason. Now, that'll change. If they play well, we won't be saying that. Then all of a sudden, everybody else that has to play them is worried. But right now, with what they've done lately, which is about the last 6 weeks, you can't look at that schedule and feel good about it. I mean, the Bills probably won't be favorites in a lot of those games. And if they are, I'm going to bet the other way until they prove it.
So knowing the schedules moving forward for the remainder of the year, if you had to pick one team out of the two that played last night to make the playoffs, you picking the Bills or you picking the Broncos?
I'd still take the Bills only because they have a half game in hand on them, and Denver's schedule is not particularly easy either. Right now, I would say both of them aren't going to make the playoffs. But I think Buffalo would still take a nod there because it's still Buffalo. They have a lot of these players. If they play better, it'll be better. But they've got to until they do that, which they haven't now for a little while. I mean, they should have won that game last night.
Yeah.
We would still be having this same conversation if they were 6-4. Denver misses that field goal. Everything else happens the same way. We'd be having the exact same conversation.
How in the world do you have 12 men on the field for a field goal attempt, and then Will Lutz misses the field goal?
Well, that's what will change. McDermott may not survive this. If this happens, and it's not his fault, and I think he's a good coach, but he's going to have to be the fall guy if this continues to go sideways. And I'm not even sure it's his fault, but he's going to be the fall guy. I mean, I don't know what else you do, right? You can't run that back next year.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's a tough spot. All right, K-State played South Dakota State. Don't forget, we've got Shreyas Laddha, our KU insider, coming up to preview tonight's KU game and this weekend in football. We've got tiebreakers in the Big 12. We have a little more clarity and understanding on today than we did a day ago, so we can bring you that. But we'll talk a little K-State hoops. Very impressive showing, and I thought some pretty big things to take away from it. We'll do that. We've got giveaways, movie tickets coming, HTO. In fact, because we've got a very busy top of the hour, let's start with the HTO today. By the way, you can pre-order your Thanksgiving gallons. You can get 4 of those for $19.99. It's a discount of what a gallon usually is. You pre-order them now. You pick them up right before the holiday. They're ready to go. It's the busiest time of the year at HTO. So you can do that now while you're in there. Get yourself a free iced tea or a free Brewhouse coffee drink. We'll give away one of each of those to our first caller on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. HTO in East and West Wichita and in Derby. Good luck, everybody. We'll come back, talk a little K-State hoops right after this.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers, man in that IHOP hotline for us, finding us winners for our contest. Congratulations to Gary for winning some tea and coffee from HTO. We'll give away some movie tickets. We'll give away a couple pairs of those movie tickets, so hang tight if you want to go see that new Hunger Games movie. All right, Tommy, let's talk a little bit here about K-State last night. We were excited about this game. We thought it might tell us something. South Dakota State, look, I don't know a lot about South Dakota State this year, but I do know it's typically a program that, is decent. Zeke Mustard, your boy last night that you brought up yesterday, only had 11 points in the game. But it, of course, was more about K-State. And it was nice to see it. We wanted to see it. We wanted to see, at least to cover the number, I think is where we put it yesterday. They blew it out of the water. And again, Tyler Perry is there. Cam Carter took 20 shots. And we keep saying, who's it going to be? Maybe it is just Cam Carter. Look, he is taking advantage of an opportunity right now to be that guy. And if he can prove it now, it will hold true through the year. I don't know I suppose when you shoot 50%, you'll take 20 shots for sure. He had a ton of threes. Maybe it is that. Maybe he is going to be that guy. Dai Ames played more, than he had, and he had a bunch of assists, oddly, but, he had the minutes. And I think we're beginning to see it. Tang is still playing a lot of guys, but as of now, offensively, it's going to be Perry and Carter. I think now through 3 games, it's like, okay, that's what's going to happen here. We can probably stop looking for that answer to that question.
And they did all of that without Arthur Kaluma, who didn't play last night. I read that he had a knee that was bothering him, so he didn't really practice a whole lot leading up to the game, and so they decided to hold him out and rest him. I don't know if that's something to be concerned about moving forward, if that's a chronic thing, if it's a new injury. I don't know. I have no idea. Tang didn't really reference it in his post-game comments other than just, his knee was bothering him, so he didn't play. But the fact that they, still went out there and blew out South Dakota State without Arthur Kaluma, and then you had the production from Carter and Perry, that's a good sign. Look at, and we've talked about it before, they're missing Naquan Tomlin. We have no idea if he's coming back, no idea when that's going to be or even if that's going to happen. They didn't have him last night, and they didn't have Arthur Kaluma, and they still looked pretty solid. I think Tyler Perry is the gas in the gas tank for this team, and when he's playing well, the team is going to play well, right? And the shots that Cam Carter took, I'm okay with. I'm all right with him stepping into that role at that point. It looks like he's going to be kind of that second option for this team. I saw what I wanted to see from Kansas State last night. Do I think that they're going to be ultimately better if they can get those 2 guys back in short order? Absolutely, I do. But at least last night, in absence of those guys, I thought it was a pretty solid showing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what's interesting to me is how many minutes are being spread among the young players. I think the reason for K-State, when I talk about K-State with people, it's like, I think we're going to know what they are in January, right? Once we get into conference play. A big part of that is because of all these young guys sort of, finding themselves within the rotation. We know Carter and Perry and Gasson will be 3 of the, the main contributors. We assume Kaluma will be 2, and who knows about Tomlin. That would give you probably what you would assume would be a starting 5, except right now there's these massive opportunities for all those other players that we're seeing, and who steps up out of that, we don't know that yet, right? Minutes-wise, Will McNair and Dai Ames led the way, but then you had like significant minutes for RJ Jones, Michaela Britch, and Jarrell Colbert. So I don't know the answer to that. Well, that's got to play itself out. And some of those guys played really well too, by the way.
Well, and they shot the ball.
At least offensively.
They shot the ball really well last night. Tyler Perry was, 6 of 8 from beyond the arc last night.
We saw Tyler Perry last night.
If he's going to shoot at that clip moving forward, and that's great. And Cam Carter was 4 of 8. Overall, the team shot over 55% from beyond the arc. It was a good shooting night for the Wildcats.
It was. It was a really, really nice and encouraging performance. And I think, you look at it, and again, like what's so hard about K-State this year is like, what is the expectation? What is the ceiling? I think that the possibilities in both directions are endless. I'm still just going to say, make the NCAA tournament this year and see what happens. But I do think there's a world where the ceiling could be much, much higher than that. Tyler Perry last night showed us what kind of player he can be. And if he gets more comfortable in scores and, shoots a high percentage and does those things, I think they're going to be okay offensively. I don't know what, it's hard too with Jerome Tang, because last year it was such a 2-headed, like it was so filtered and funneled into those 2 players. I think naturally, and I'm guilty of this too. It's like, okay, well, what 2 players is it going to be this year? Is it going to be right now? Shots. It's definitely the shot volume's going to Carter and Perry, but maybe it doesn't have to be, right? Maybe it can be totally normal, and that was just a product of the roster last year, and they can spread it out far more than they did a year ago offensively, which would be better for the team anyway. But it was a really nice and impressive win for them, and I'm glad that they were able to get that done in that way. And again, who knows? South Dakota State may not be good at all, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think, what South Dakota is necessarily, as much as it is that there was a 23-point win, and I don't care who that's against in big time college basketball or just college basketball at that level. Coming up for K-State, so you'll have now they head off to the Baja More Hoops Bahamas Championship with action beginning there. Is that this Friday?
Yeah, they play Friday. They'll play Providence on Friday. It's a 14 tournament. It's a small tournament. I'm interested to see.
It's a good one, though.
I'm interested to see how that all works. I mean, Providence, I have no idea what to expect from them. They were a tournament team a year ago, but they don't have Ed Cooley anymore. Ed Cooley goes off to Georgetown to try to turn around the Hoyas. So I'm not exactly sure, what we can expect from Providence necessarily, but you've got a couple of other NCAA tournament teams with the Wildcats, and then of course with Miami in the field, and then Georgia joins the 4-team field also. So I'm interested to see how the Wildcats can perform in this tournament. I don't think it's too much to ask for them to win. I mean, it's a small tournament, a 4-team tournament. You got to win 2 games, Friday and Sunday. I think that it should be something that we expect that they come out of the Bahamas winners of this tournament.
Yeah. I don't know. Miami.
What about, Miami and Providence, right? And Georgia, I guess. But Georgia's not good.
I don't. Miami's been really good lately, so I don't know what they have. Like that's the problem now. Is like we know Kansas is really good because they return so many players, right? There are not very many teams that do that anymore. So I don't know. I assume because they're always good that Miami's good. They're probably in a fairly similar situation as with Providence with Kansas State, where you're just trying to feel it out. I think it's absolutely an opportunity to win the tournament. There's no doubt about that. Like, it's in the car. I would have thought that probably before last night, but last night showed us like this team's good enough to win a tournament like that for sure.
Right.
And I love holiday tournaments because it gets everybody out of their comfort zone. You got to go on the road. Yeah, they're neutral site, but you got to get put in a weird spot. There's distractions. There's all these things. You get in there and you mix it up with teams you wouldn't see normally. I love holiday tournaments.
Yeah, I think that in this tournament, Miami's going to be the favorite. I think that Kansas State can win the tournament, though. Miami's going to be the favorite. They're 12th overall in the nation in the top 25. They have Nigel Pack. Nigel Pack is still on that team, by the way. But other than that, it's kind of a rebuilding or reloading year, I guess, for Jim Larinaga with the Hurricanes. But they are 12th in the country, so they're going to be the presumptive favorite in this tournament. But I do think that Kansas State has the talent where they can win it.
Well, and let's pay attention to it too, because they finish up, the month of November. They come back to Manhattan after the tournament. And they play Central Arkansas, Oral Roberts, and North Alabama. We know Oral Roberts doesn't have Asmus anymore, so they're probably not nearly as good. So that's a stretch where it's like, okay, then you feel right, and you just let the young guys play. These 2 games here are going to be pretty critical. I love K-State's schedule, by the way. You get a game against Villanova. You get the game against Wichita State. LSU and Nebraska are mixed in there. Like, there's a lot of really fun games. It's a good schedule. And the timing of the schedule with the roster is really good. And it's like you get these chunks, right? Now you're going to get a chunk of some really tough basketball. Then you're going to get a chunk of some pretty easy basketball. Then you're going to get another chunk of some really tough basketball. They'll be prepared by the time the Big 12 rolls around. And the timing on that, you can't always control it, but it's a good year to have it because they do. Like Kansas is going to play just an incredible schedule coming like over the next, 5 or 6 games or before they get it to conference. It's going to be wild, but that's what they need, right? They have to do that because that's a team that sort of knows everything about itself already. They just need the experience. Kansas State needs a little opportunity to find something out about itself.
Yeah, I was complaining a week ago about how the college basketball season kind of started off with the dud. You didn't really have like major big time programs in the first couple of days until you got to Arizona and Duke playing each other. But other than that, like there really weren't major high profile matchups. Now, all of a sudden, I mean, we're getting into it in the second week with the Champions Classic tonight. Then KU goes off to the Maui Invitational, where it's top tier talent for sure. So there are definitely some big time matchups in the next 2 weeks that I'm looking forward to. With Kansas State, by the way, I'm really interested. I want to know more about what's going on with Arthur Kaluma's knee, and if this is something that is, going to carry on, or if it was a one game thing where he just had a kind of a bothered knee for a couple of days and he's good to go. I know that that really it's Perry and it's Carter as of right now, but Kaluma does bring a high level of talent and skill, and somebody that can be a
Sure.
difference maker for the
Yeah.
Wildcats. So I really am curious to know if this is something that's a short-term deal or something to monitor moving forward.
I mean, we'd have to look back at his history. I would think it's short term because it would have happened in practice. But I mean, we'll know real quick. I mean, if he plays in the Bahamas, he's obviously totally fine. If they hold him out that long, I don't know. But yeah, I think we should certainly consider him to be a key contributor in whatever capacity this year. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. K-State, again, they play again next on Friday when they hit that holiday tournament and open with Providence. We'll come back. We'll bounce around a little bit here. We've got KU talk coming in the next hour. We've got Chiefs talk coming in the next hour. Dan Israel of the Chiefs Radio Network will join us at the top of the hour. Trias Lada to talk KU football and basketball in the next hour. When we come back, Tommy, let's go over these playoff scenarios, not playoff, but Big 12 championship scenarios for KU and K-State football. It's wild, and the possibilities are almost literally endless. We'll go over that next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. On our way in, let's give away some movie tickets. A sneak peek opening of The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which will be Thursday night at Boulevard Theaters in Town West Square. We'll give away a pair of tickets right now on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. By the way, if you can't get enough Chiefs content, check out Fansided's Arrowhead Addict, the Kansas City Chiefs podcast, which is free on the Odyssey app. Follow Arrowhead Addict on the Odyssey app, or wherever you get your podcast. We'll have Dan Israel of the Chiefs Radio Network, the executive producer, joining us at the top of the hour here on the show. Tommy, these playoff scenarios in Big 12 football are nuts. So Kansas has a chance. It's an outside chance, but really we focus in on Kansas State's chance because it's not far-fetched. Basically, Kansas State needs to just win its games, of course, but then root for Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. What Kansas State wants is a three-way tie for second. A two-way tie would be no good. You need Texas to have the other spot. So if you're Kansas State, if you're a Kansas State fan, if you haven't seen this yet, the best case scenario is a three-way tie for second because they would win that tiebreaker. They would lose a head-to-head tiebreaker against either Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, but they'd win a three-way tiebreaker if it's them, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. And the way that happens is if all three of those teams win the rest of their games, which is totally possible.
Yeah, I mean, the schedules for both of these teams, for both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, it's advantageous, I think, for the Wildcats, really. I mean, Oklahoma has BYU this weekend, and then they have TCU next weekend. It's fairly likely, I would say, that Oklahoma wins both of those games. Oklahoma State has Houston this weekend, and then they have BYU next weekend. So again, conceivable for Oklahoma State to win both of those games as well. It's wild how they would lose a head-to-head tiebreaker against either one of those teams, but they would win a three-way tiebreaker to get into the Big 12 title game. You mentioned that there is still a path for KU. There is. And so I'm not even going to break down what it looks like next weekend. What has to happen this weekend for the Jayhawks to even have any chance to compete in a Big 12 title game, they have to win. They have to beat K-State this weekend in the Sunflower Showdown, and they actually need BYU to beat Oklahoma and Houston to beat Oklahoma State. That's what has to happen this weekend for the Jayhawks to have any chance to get into the Big 12 title game.
And of course, the Sunflower Showdown stands in the way of both KU and K-State's hopes and dreams here. So that does get the intrigue where we want it to be because both teams can get into the Big 12 championship game. I feared when, when K-State lost to Texas, and even when Kansas lost to, you feared that injury. But the reality is both of their hopes are still alive. And so, like that makes it everything you want to see. And we'll get the new CFP rankings tonight, and both teams are going to be ranked in those, I'm pretty sure. So they'll both be ranked. The winner still has a shot at a Big 12 championship. Like, it's all there for KU and K-State. The only better scenario is if they were both unbeaten, right, coming into this game or something. But this is as much as we could ask for. And it sounds like Jason Bean will play based on what Lance Leipold said yesterday. So, again, that's going to make it better, right, that we think he'll play, and you'll at least get the versions of these teams we've seen all year. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I saw the depth chart that KU released yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
I didn't.
But the depth chart for Kansas under quarterback started with Jason Bean. Then it said, or Cole Ballard. Then it said, or Jalen Daniels, which is funny when they throw that word in there, or. I mean, it's going to be Jason Bean from what it sounds like. I don't know if there's gamesmanship, if that's kind of what it is, in heading up to the Sunflower Showdown. But it was good to hear from Leipold that Jason Bean is improving, doing better, and on track to play on Saturday.
It's time for college football coaches to be held to a higher standard on injury reports. Like we're all adults. Like it's time. Like I listened to Lance Leipold get snarky with reporters asking about the quarterback in the post game. Like, what the hell do you think they're going to ask about? Like, don't get annoyed when they ask you who your quarterback's going to be, or if Jason Bean's health is okay, or what happened to him. Like, can we stop as coaches, getting so offended when people ask you about injury? Like, shut up and answer the question, or don't answer the question. Just say, I'm not going to answer that, or no comment. Like, you don't have to cop an attitude. Those people are doing their jobs. literally every one of your fans that pays your paychecks wants to know the answer to that question. Can we just answer the question? And honestly, like conferences, can we just make these people put out a legitimate injury report like we do in the NFL and stop with this like super ultra secret strategy of who's going to be our quarterback? Like enough, right? Like, let's just do this, please.
So there's also a scenario, and by the way, okay, so one of my favorite movie scenes of all time is from the movie The Dark Knight. And when Commissioner Gordon is talking about the Joker and says, some men just want to watch the world burn. So if you're one of those people, if you like anarchy, there is a scenario where if all the home teams win this weekend, then it sets up another scenario where you could have conceivably an 8-team tie for first place in the Big 12. 8 teams in a tie for first place, but all the home teams have to win this weekend to set up that scenario for the final weekend of the season.
If Kansas or Kansas State can't get in for whatever reason, I want that to happen.
Yeah.
I want that to happen. Just because. Why not?
8 teams tied for first place. It's very unlikely that happens, but man, that would be awesome.
I don't think it's going to happen, in fact. But yeah, it's on the table. It is like I just want to know, like, is Jason Bean really going to be? And we won't know, and that's the problem. We're not going to. I guess we'll know if he practices. I don't know if people are privy to that information, but you know, we see this all the time in college. Like, you just don't get good information on who's going to play. And look, this isn't the reason to do it, but if you're college football or basketball, read the room. A lot of people watch your sport because they bet your sport, and that's why the NFL does it. You can say what you want. The NFL makes that because of fantasy football and because of betting, right? Like they make you give an injury report.
Well, and then you throw in the factor of NIL, and not that that's the end all be all, but if you've got players that, you know, there are businesses that are compensating them and they're spending money, they kind of want to know if their player is going to play, right? And so I think it adds in a whole different layer when you're adding in NIL, when you're adding in sports wagering. There's a lot more layers to.
Just give us an injury report. It's not that hard.
Just be transparent.
Just give us a report. All you have to say is he's probable or he's still questionable, right? Like he's out. What is it? It's a head injury. Like, it's not that complicated. Like, come on. Anyway, we're selfishly just wanting the information here. 869-1240. We'll come back. Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joins us to talk about the chaos of the last week, which is all great for the Chiefs, right? And looking ahead to a big Eagles showdown. And did he see the kiss? Tommy, I can't believe you didn't tell me about the kiss in Argentina yesterday. I didn't find out about that till I got to my other job much later in the afternoon. All that happened. I didn't even know. How do you let that happen?
How did you not know? It was everywhere.
You're my informant on these things.
It was everywhere.
Not on my phone, I guess. Like, I don't know why, but man, kiss in Argentina. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Wedding bells soon?
Sounds like the title of a James Bond movie, Kiss in Argentina.
On Inside Edition.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Caught! Touchdown! Kansas City!
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, we have you covered. Joining Sports Daily Live, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, Dan Israel.
And welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 of the show here. Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joins us on Sports Daily. Dan, the bye week is behind us. The trip to Germany is behind us. And now as we look forward, we get the big one, the Eagles, the Super Bowl rematch. Two teams that, have a lot to say with this game and how it turns out. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Jake?
We're good. We're good. How could you not be with that game looming? I mean, it's good, too, that apparently it's good that the Chiefs didn't play last week because it was a bloodbath for the top teams.
Yeah, how about that? And, I think it was really difficult last night. I'm a little hungover from rooting for Denver because that's tough, man. It is really tough to root for a team in your division, but they took care of business. Albeit a strange ending all that matters is they knocked the Bills down one more peg, so that's helpful. Appreciate the help by them.
Yeah, they sure did, and they're playing much, much better. I thought that they had as much to do with that as Buffalo playing poorly. But, we look at this. I've said for a while that I'm not, like, whatever happens with the Chiefs, if they're playing that level of defense and they have Mahomes and Kelsey in the playoffs, I'm not going to worry terribly. I will say, though, this is kind of the one where they need to get some of it right offensively and in the passing game, because Philadelphia has sort of let teams do that this year. This one does maybe feel, not just because both teams are really good, not just because it's the Super Bowl rematch, because it is an opportunity now with the bye week and against this defense for the Chiefs passing game to make us feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going up against the other top team in the league, the whole league, right? It's the Chiefs and the Eagles right now, and so you're going up against what is arguably the best or second best team in the league against yourself. That means that they're going to be playing all three phases well. I think it's incumbent that we have to play all three phases well. I do think it's interesting with the Chiefs offense. I've always Coach will always talk about things being a tick off or, just a smidge, I think as he calls them. I did, in looking back at the Germany game, there were a number of those instances where if they cleaned up, it would have meant another score or two. And the Germany game was a good game, right? But you talk about the offense returning to its form, let's say, right? They need to take that step at some point in late November or December. Why not do it against the Eagles this week? I mean, I don't know what all they've got going coming back from vacation, where their heads are at, but I would suspect Coach Reed is going to focus these guys to do just that, because I think the more quickly we can return to that form, the more muscle memory will be to take into the playoffs, which is ultimately where it's going to be required. And in a sense, you're playing a playoff caliber team, a Super Bowl caliber team. So if you don't do it this week, you're going to end up with an L, and why forfeit that if you don't have to, right?
Well, yeah, and again, like, I don't want to overreact. Let's say they play poorly, because this last week showed us that nobody is just really, really good. I mean, I do think the Chiefs are the best of the group, because I think you've got Mahomes combined with that defense. But there's not anybody that's making this easy on us to sort of power rank, especially in the AFC. I mean, you see the Bengals lose at home. You see Buffalo lose at home. Jacksonville is a loser again. Baltimore gives up a huge lead. Like, those teams that are in there are going through some of the same struggles, albeit in different ways. So to me, like, I just want to see it, like, strategically from an X's and O's perspective. Can they pass on a team that's let teams pass on them? But it's going to be the Chiefs for me at the end of the year if they're healthy. I mean, it just is, because nobody else is coming and taking it.
But I think, to your point, the league right now, this season in particular, seems to have this incredible amount of parity. You're talking about the Denver Broncos, who started 1-5, I think, beating the Buffalo Bills. I mean, nobody would have placed a parlay or any kind of bet on that at any point. Not maybe after they beat the Chiefs, it'd be like, hey, maybe they're fixing things. But I don't think you would say. I don't think you'd be gutsy enough yet. And I realize the Bills are broken too. There's something going on. But I think that something that's going on is exactly what you said. I thought with the Chiefs' loss to Denver, the same as the Bills' loss to Denver last night, was a lot about Denver's defense. They're turning the ball over. They're forcing errors. And so I think if Denver's defense continues to play the way they're playing, we might actually have another opponent in the AFC West, which is unfortunate, but kind of the name of the game. Chargers always tough. Denver hasn't been tough, but that defense, if they keep playing the way they are going to wreak havoc. And so I think across the league, you have to give some of the bottom teams credit for the lack of success of these top teams. Maybe not always. Josh Allen just seems to be a little bit. It seems to be like he's different than what he was. I think, you saw Burrow early in the season injured. You saw a number of guys, Arizona faltering with Kyler Murray out and all this. So I do think that, it puts a lot of pressure on the really good teams these bad teams being better than just, I mean, yes, statistically they're bad or their records are bad, but they're playing better football than probably what their records indicate. And consequently, it makes the teams, the tough teams, the good teams that they're playing look not as good. I think that's the case in the Denver game. I thought that was the case last night with the Bills game, the Denver Chiefs game, and then again last night with the Bills Denver game. So I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the season, because to me, I always say September's kind of a liar. October is where everybody's figuring things out. November, it's starting to, things are starting to shake out. And by December, it's pretty clear who's going to make the run. Well, I think that we know the Chiefs and Eagles are going to be there. So it's really the rest of the pack behind us at this point, how that's going to shape out. Chiefs need to just continually, and even if it's slowly, Jacob, I think, take that next step to get ready for postseason form.
Well, I do too. I think that Mahomes is fine, right? But look at this. This is what's crazy with quarterback this year. I'm looking at like MVP, and Mahomes is still the odds-on favorite. But I'm watching a guy like C.J. Stroud, and what's crazy about it is, Stroud's had a better year. Stroud is, it sounds blasphemous, and I don't intend it that way. But it's a weird year. You could say C.J. Stroud's playing better than Patrick Mahomes, and I don't know what that means. But it's just been a weird year at quarterback.
I'll jump on that bandwagon as well. And in fact, my AP and I were talking 2 days ago. Well, on Sunday, C.J. Stroud right now, in my opinion, is more valuable to the Texans than probably Mahomes to the Chiefs. I don't know. We haven't seen. We haven't.
It's crazy,
and that's what the MVP is about, right? So, look, Mahomes is definitely important. Every quarterback's important to their team, but Mahomes hasn't necessarily the reason we're winning this year. For the Texans, Stroud is, and man, they look good Sunday. They look good. It was weird to watch, to see them all of a sudden kind of really. So he's been playing that way all year. I know he battled. There was a little low point in there where he was battling some injury, but his stats are really good. And I think as the Texans, as C.J. Stroud goes, the Texans go. And I don't know if you can say that about Mahomes with the way the Chiefs defense is playing.
So when we talk about what it is for them in a bye week, and we know Andy Reid after a bye week, it does feel different though with what we'd normally be talking about coming out of a bye week. It's that he can set up so many plays and all this, but this is a bye week that almost feels like early, like before the season starts, a bye week to get more reps and try to help the young players get better. It doesn't feel like a normal bye week to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I would agree with that. I hadn't really thought about it till you just verbalized it, and I'm sure some of that's the Germany game, the hangover from the Germany game. For me in particular, I stayed in Germany, as you know, so I don't feel like I really had quite the normal bye. Whether the players feel that way, I know Travis Kelce went to, Argentina, so I'm sure he's got a little bit of jet lag in him as well. But I just always, Coach Reid is so good about having them focused, and for Reid himself, I don't think he probably would have allowed, too much variation in the routine for the bye week from his coaching staff. Obviously, players are out of the building, but when they return today, it'll be interesting, as they sit back down, just to kind of get a vibe for where everybody's at. Because you're right, it doesn't quite feel that way, it should. It just doesn't.
All right, let's talk about the Eagles matchup specifically. Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network. You can hear that Chiefs Radio Network with us here in our Odyssey family each and every week. The Eagles are interesting. They don't really allow much on the ground. They give up some stuff through the air. Their offense is obviously dynamic. What do you is like when we look at A.J. Brown, who's been as close to unstoppable as there has been in football this year, is that like a McDuffie assignment? What does history tell us with the way Chiefs play in the secondary? Do they assign McDuffie to him, or can the Eagles move him around and create the matchups on their own?
I think both teams can do that, but I do think with Spagnuolo, he disguises so many things. I think ultimately they'll try to shade, they'll try to rotate McDuffie on AJ Brown, but I think the problem with it is that sometimes when you're disguising those defenses in the beginning, you get stuck, right? You either give your hand away or you got to sit there until the snap, and sometimes that's not fast enough with a guy like Brown. So I think they're going to want the preponderance of McDuffie on him. McDuffie's just playing too good. I mean, what he did with Tyreek Hill was unfathomable, especially after the little, Twitter, the trash talk that Tyreek Hill put out before the Germany game. But I feel like, he's just playing at a level where he deserves, top corner discussion. And there's a lot of good ones, right? But he should be on the list. And so for the Chiefs, you got to put him on your best guy, in my opinion. The Eagles will take advantage of you if you don't. And so I think one of the things about the Eagles, they feel like Drago in a Rocky movie, man. They just have the ability to punch you hard right when it hurts, and that's on defense and offense. The whole tush, push, brotherly shove, whatever they call it, that is so demoralizing to a defense. When you know exactly what's going to happen, you know exactly what's going to happen, and you can't stop it.
And you can't stop it.
That's tough, man. That's tough to swallow. I know these linemen are proud about, not giving an inch and to give a yard when you know exactly how they're going to try to accomplish it is a really tough thing on defenses. But I think they hit you with that when they keep drives alive at the most opportune times, and then offensively they'll strike on you, man. I mean, they'll run the ball, and just as soon as you try to shut down whatever they're adjusting to, they adjust and take advantage of you. So I really think it's a bend and don't break philosophy for the Chiefs defense this week. I don't always say that because I mean, it is always that to some degree, but at some point you got to go for the jugular, I mean, I don't know if these metaphors are really appropriate, but you want to at some point just clamp down and say, all right, you're no longer in control. We're in control. We'll take the ball. We'll push you off the field, whatever. And so for a team against the Eagles, I don't know you can do that. I just don't think you can say, all right, we're going to stop you. So you've got to slow them down. You got to minimize how much they accomplish on you because you're going to have to keep up with them.
Yeah, and you have to score. That's why I like the test for the Chiefs, because they're going to have to. You can't, even against the Dolphins, they could coast into a win there. I agree. I don't think that's going to be on the table for the Eagles. You brought up the tush push. I think it's interesting, and I know this is a question for Chiefs fans, and one you probably heard 1,000 times. The Chiefs have Blake Bell on the roster. The guy that sort of seems like he is designed for a play like that. As much as the Chiefs struggle in short yardage, how can you not steal that play and just let Blake Bell take it under center? I mean, he did that for years in college.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, right? Because you'd say, okay, Bell's a quarterback. He's obviously they're doing a tush push. Well, that's exactly what the Eagles are doing. It's not like they're disguising.
You're not disguising anything. Yeah,
that's right. If you give up on that fact, say, okay, we don't care if you know what we're going to do. We're just going to be good at doing it. And it doesn't risk your quarterback, which I think to some degree, like I realize I'm putting words in Coach Reed's mouth here, but to some degree, I think we don't do the quarterback sneak like other teams simply because of what happened in Denver a few years ago when Mahomes got hurt. Whether that's a Mahomes, I don't want to do it. I can't imagine that's the case. I think it's more hey, we don't want to put our valuable player, at the bottom of a pile. Well, then move Bell into it. It's a good idea, man. I think you should get some credit for that play call.
Do it. He's the belldozer. Before there was the tush push, there was the belldozer. Like that was his thing. And so I get not letting a running back get under center and take a handoff because they've never done it before. Blake Bell's done it over his career. That's what made him famous. I keep watching that, and I know they're not going to do it. I don't know what it is that changes that philosophy on short yardage for the Chiefs. It just screams at me every time I see the Eagles play. Like, one, why doesn't everybody do it? I know why the Chiefs don't do it, because they're not going to let Mahomes get in the middle of a scrum like that. But you probably have somebody that would challenge Jalen Hurts as far as effectiveness there. At least, history tells us that. Jalen Hurts has been an interesting quarterback this year. Historically, the Chiefs have struggled to some degree against running quarterbacks. Has that been the case this year? I don't recall off the top of my head.
Let me just think back. Yeah, really, we haven't played a lot of.
It's not glaring this year like it has been in years past, but I can't remember if it's because they've done better or because, you look at it, they really haven't played. They played Justin Fields, I suppose, and just smashed the Bears, never gave him a chance.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. So how much of that, I wonder, do you have to look out for with Hurts this year and something they haven't really seen yet?
Well, I thought it was interesting last night. I don't know if you caught the Manning cast of Monday Night Football, but Mahomes was a guest on there, and he was talking about how this year teams are starting to put a spy on him because they realized before when they look at it on tape, he says, my running looks kind of goofy and I don't look real fast, but I'm faster than they think, or I'm faster than the tape shows. And so they've started to spy him. I think to some degree you got to do that with a guy like Hurts. He's just too athletic, man. If you give the opportunity to Hurts, he's going to hurt you more than he's going to, help you. And so I feel like they've got to do something to kind of keep him contained, right? Force him to be just a tick off and not let him get into a groove. And the only way you do that, in my opinion, is to spy him at least part of the time, especially in critical downs. But he is a guy I think that is going to, I think going into this game, fans should expect he's going to have 20, 30 yards rushing. You just hope it's not at critical time.
Yeah, what do you think of receivers? It felt like a little bit of a progress by Sky Moore, and we can end with this. He made a couple of plays that you liked, and then, of course, the offense went stale. Are we getting any progress out of these young guys? We know Rice is, but any of the others?
Yeah, I want to say, just for the sake of my own sanity, I want to say yes, because I just was, I clicked the ballpoint pen to sign off on giving up with Sky Moore. I just, I feel like my patience was running out, and maybe that's just me, and maybe the coaches are seeing something that I'm not seeing there, but ultimately it's a results-oriented business. And what you do on the field on game day is what matters most. And we weren't seeing that. And so it was really good to see him be a little productive in Germany. And so, yeah, I want to say he's improving, but man, that room's still got more people in it, and more of them need to, if everyone take just one step up like that, Sky makes a couple of good passes, and then next week it's, Rice or MVS, and I'm just waiting for MVS to just play, dude. He's such a big guy, he's such a tall receiver, and I just want him to get in a groove and get going. I realize the Coach Reed offense really isn't that way. It's a spread the ball kind of around, but dude, he gets open, and he's got to be ready for whatever. These dropping the passes, fumbling. It's just he's better than that. So, yes, getting better with Sky Moore. But the rest of them need to get better as well. Still more work to come, I guess.
And it's going to need to be there because Philadelphia is a smart team. If as much as anything else, they've seen what Denver and Miami did the last 2 weeks. You take Kelsey away, and the offense can't do anything, which is what that's what Philadelphia is going to start with defensively. Yeah. So, we'll see if the Chiefs can finally make that adjustment. Maybe the bye week will help. Dan, we really appreciate it. What do you guys have coming up on the broadcast this weekend?
It's we're a little early
it's Monday.
This week.
Yeah.
It's a little early, so we haven't locked much down yet. But the nice thing about the Monday broadcast with the half-hour start, it gives us a little extra window. That gives us the time to do something creative. So we'll have something good for you.
Okay, you'll catch it on the Chiefs Radio Network right here with us on the Odyssey family of networks. Dan, we appreciate it. Good luck this week, man. This one's good. I guess we'll have you right in the aftermath of that thing. It's going to be a crazy great game. We appreciate it.
I think the one thing, Jacob, you can be assured of is this is going to be a Super Bowl rematch. It's going to be a game that's where you see a lot of quality football being played in all three phases, and hopefully by both teams.
Yeah, I think it will be. They're both well coached, all those things. Dan, we look forward to it. We'll appreciate it. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Jacob. Go Chiefs.
There goes Dan Israel. Man, that game, it's going to take some time to really try to get a grasp of how that goes, or what we think will happen. I think it's all on the table. I think it's unpredictable. I do think it'll be close. I think it'll be awesome. And you can hear it with Dan right here on the Chiefs Radio Network. All right. We will come back and we'll talk with Shreyas Ladas, our KU insider. We'll give away some more movie tickets before the end of the program as well. If you can't get enough Chiefs content, by the way, you can check out Fansided's Arrowhead Addict, a Kansas City Chiefs podcast, free on the Odyssey app. Follow Arrowhead Addict on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. We're getting Shreyas Laddha right now, our KU insider. We'll have that for you in just a second as we get ready for a big weekend. Well, a big night for KU, Tommy. I mean, come on. Champions Classic. You're still going back after Kentucky and the wins record and all that stuff. I think KU, at last check, when I checked, it was about a 7-point favorite. Have you paid any attention to Kentucky? How have they looked? It's always hard with them early in a year to know like what they've done and how they look. They've always obviously got talent. So let's say they've won a couple of games. They've beaten New Mexico State by 40, A&M Commerce by 20. So they haven't been really tested yet. It is still 7, but I kind of like Kansas on that 7 points. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, so do I. And I think that with Kentucky, obviously, one of the big narratives for a while has been, what does John Calipari's future look like in Lexington? And I know that a portion of the fan base, they've gotten a little disillusioned with Calipari and all of that. So, I think that's kind of what I've been paying attention to with this team, at least for this season, because I do think that it's a critical year for Calipari and for Kentucky to have a good year.
Well, let's get a scout on Kentucky. We know Shreyas Laddha has checked into them. Jad will hit the music, and here comes our KU insider.
It's that time, Sports Daily, getting all the inside information on the Kansas Jayhawks. Let's go now to the KU football and basketball beat writer from the Kansas City Star, Shreyas Laddha.
All right, Shreyas, KC Star, what do you know on Kentucky? Let's get that right out of the way here off the top. The Wildcats any good this year?
They have a lot of youth, a lot of talent that's probably going to be in the NBA draft in the next couple of years. Justin Edwards is the projected top 10 pick. A lot of great young guys. They don't have a ton of bigs that are playable right now. I think Hunter Dickinson can feast there. I think one of the guys is coming back actually for this game. But this team is just really young. I think they have only one player, Reeves, who's played in the Champions Classic before. And just overall, they have a lot of young talent, but not a ton of experience.
Shreyas, what's your expectation in this game tonight? What does Kansas have to do to win, to look impressive in this victory? Is it a Hunter Dickinson game, like you mentioned, with Kentucky not having a lot of extremely talented bigs? Is that kind of what you're looking at for tonight?
Yeah, it's definitely Hunter Dickinson having a good game. But I think the big thing for KU is going to be on the defensive end. They want to stop these great individual scorers, like Bill Self said yesterday. These guys can score the heck out of the ball. So if you limit Kentucky's transition opportunities, limit them in fast breaks, I think that's huge because they're an athletic team, they're a young team, and they're playing on neutral ground for the first time in their career, really, a lot of these guys. And, it's going to be probably a split crowd. Kansas, Kentucky, it's not too far from Chicago. So I'm expecting Kansas to win this game because of the experience factor and the fact that these guys have done it before. But I think Kentucky can give them a fight just because of the natural talent that Kentucky has.
Shreyas, KU through the openers, I mean, we're seeing exactly what we want to, right? There's not a lot to sort out, I suppose, other than who will be the fifth starter and how many guys is Bill Self going to take into the rotation. When we look around the country, there may not be a team that we already know as much about as we know about KU, but as we make our way through this brutal schedule that they're going to play, like, what are you looking for still? I feel like we kind of know what we're going to get out of KU this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is how are the new guys adjusting? How are guys like Marco Jackson, Jamar McDowell, Furphy, and Nick Timberlake, how are their roles, slowly adjusting? How is KJ Adams, adjusting to playing the four alongside Hunter Dickinson? One of those things I think are important. How does KU's defense look against formidable teams? Is the three-point shooting a mirage, or is it for real? And how good is it, and will it falter at important moments throughout the season? Because this team, I think, still lacks maybe one shooter. But with Furphy, it looks like they have somebody who can shoot the heck out of the ball. And obviously Timberlake, once he gets his, I think, stroke going and his confidence back a little bit, he's going to be great. So just those couple of things I think are huge, is role adjustments, how the new guys adjusting, and, defense and three-point shooting.
Sharice, it seems like every single season with this Jayhawks basketball team, we're talking about a player that takes a big time leap when they return to the program. A couple of years ago, it was Ochai Agbaji. Last year, it was Jalen Wilson. This year, it's Kevin McCullough. How impressed have you been with the all-around play from McCullough and the way he's developed in this last year in Lawrence for him?
I think he's been great. I mean, one of the biggest things I've noticed with Kevin is he's just confident. You know, he can score from anywhere on the floor. His three-point shooting looks better. I want to see it throughout the season because I think that's the one thing preventing him from being a late first-rounder, early second-round pick last year. And, I mean, he's talked about that before. And, you know, he feels like, you know, I feel like he feels like he's really adjusted to this Bill Self system. You know, last year I felt like he had some issues with confidence and some of his issues overall of just having to deal with adjusting to a new coach, a new town, new city, new everything. And there were some moments where you felt like that, you know, kind of dawned on him a little bit. And then he dealt with some injury issues as well. I think this year you can see how confident he is in his play on both ends of the court. And it showed up because he looked like the best player Kansas has had on that entire team with a guy like Hunter Dickinson coming in. That's pretty impressive.
All right, let's switch to football a little bit, Sharius, here as we get ready for, the big one. And the implications are there despite the Kansas State loss to Texas and despite the Kansas loss to Texas Tech. The Big 12 championship is in theory on the table still for both of these teams. The hype around this is going to be incredible. We heard Leipold say yesterday he's very optimistic Jason Bean will play. Are you buying into that? Are you feeling that same sentiment? I know they don't have to tell us the truth about injuries, but do you think Bean will be able to go?
I honestly have no idea. I mean, I feel like every time whatever is said in a press conference, I just kind of now listen to it, think about it, and I was like, well, find out Saturday. You know, I mean, like we've heard so many different things with Jalen, and, you know, I don't know what is true and what's not true anymore. And to be honest with you, you know, it's a good sign that Lance is optimistic, but he didn't practice yesterday. And I think he said in Hawk Talk or something like that he isn't quite sure when Bean will be ready. But, you know, the big thing is you want to get Cole Ballard ready just in case. And, you know, Bean's had the last couple of weeks of first team reps. So, you know, he has that, and I think they can throw him in if they need him and he's ready to go. But I honestly, it could be anything because we still didn't get really clarification if it is more like the specific injury. I don't know if it's concussion, anything like that. We just know it's a head injury when we ask. And, you know, I mean, to be quite frank, I guess we'll find out Saturday.
My big two takeaways from the Texas Tech game on Saturday, number one was how good Cole Ballard looked and how he was poised and just had the air of confidence. And that's a tough thing to do when you're a freshman quarterback coming in cold. You know, they had a chance to win that game behind Cole Ballard, and he aired it out throughout the game, and I thought he looked pretty solid. That was number one. Number two was how impressed I was with the Kansas defense from start to finish. I know they gave up that last drive that ultimately won the game for Texas Tech, but from start to finish, I thought they looked pretty solid too. What were your two big takeaways, both with Cole Ballard coming in relief of Jason Bean and the way the defense played?
I was really, really impressed with those things. I think Cole especially, I mean, he's a third-string walk-on freshman. You know, you don't expect him to go out there gunslinging it, and he was doing it from, you know, snap one. He was airing the ball out. He was using his feet when he needed to, got some key first downs. I felt like he played with no fear. You know, like there was no deer in headlights look for him ever. The one interception he had was because a KU receiver tipped it and it got into the hands of Texas Tech. And, you know, there was a couple of big drops by these KU wide receivers, or his numbers would be even better, I think. You'd probably talk about him surpassing 200 passing yards. I was really, really impressed. And I came out of it thinking, wow, they might have found something with Cole Ballard. And, you know, I'd heard good things about him from some of the players, you know, leading up throughout the season, how they said he's a real, you know, quarterback and he's good and stuff like that. But just hearing Rich Miller and some of these other guys rave about him afterwards tells you Kansas might have a future with Cole Ballard at quarterback in the coming years. And then just looking at the defense, I was really impressed. They did a tremendous job. They gave Kansas a chance to stay in the game when the offense was struggling. I mean, the offense had never been shut out all year in either half. And I think they did a great job of, limiting Texas Tech's quarterback and, run game, even though had its moments, I think they did a pretty good job stopping it overall. I think they did as well as you could have hoped they could have played. Obviously, it was a tough last 30 seconds, but that's prevent defense. Stuff like that happens all the time. And, I think Kansas' defense has taken such a step forward from last year that Brian Borland and Lance Leipold can pat themselves on the back a little bit because they have done a great job and they've kept themselves in games that they have no business being in throughout the year.
So K-State Trays comes in as an 8-point favorite. It's where it is. It's bounced around a little bit. I think that this is a matchup that favors K-State. I get it. What is the key for Kansas, do you think? Not knowing who's going to play quarterback or whatever. What is the key for Kansas to be able to win this game at home?
I think the big thing is no mistakes on the offensive end. You can't turn the ball over. Whether it's Jason Bean or it's Cole Ballard, you can't turn the ball over. On the flip side, alongside that, K-State does a pretty good job of limiting teams on the ground. I think they only let teams run for like 3.9 yards per carry. So you need to get Devin Neon Highshaw going just so you can take some pressure, whether it's Bean or Ballard, it doesn't matter. You want to take some pressure off the quarterback. You want to run some options, the Wildcat. You got to go a little, I think Andy's going to have to go in his bag of tricks and pull some things out there. On the flip side, the defense is going to have its work cut out for them against Will Howard. And I think, you'll probably see some snaps with Avery Johnson just to give some looks to confuse the Kansas defense. So they have to be ready for both quarterbacks. I think they really do need to take advantage of the fact that if they have a ball where they look like they're going to get an interception, they got to get the interception. Like there was a couple of times in the Texas Tech game, I think that they could have really turned the momentum around where they dropped a pick or two. And I was like, oh man, like that might have been a pick six. And those type of plays, 100% building momentum for this Kansas team as we've seen throughout the year. And I think that's super, super huge. So if there are opportunities to, take advantage of Kansas State mistakes, that's what they need to do. So limit mistakes in the offensive end, get the run game going. On the flip side, you got to make Will Howard's life uncomfortable. You got to get pressure through the interior. You need to make sure that you take advantage of the fact that any errant balls thrown are picked off.
Shrees, I heard Lance Leipold talk about, I believe it was yesterday, about how he had a bad experience, I think at Buffalo, or maybe it was at Wisconsin Whitewater from a senior night, and how there was so much emotion going into the game that the team kind of came out flat and didn't play well. And he wants to avoid that with the Jayhawks this weekend. There is so much going on with this game. The Sunflower Showdown, both of these teams are good. The streak is at stake that Kansas State has over Kansas at senior night. And then you add on the fact that, it's a primetime game and it's the final home game for Memorial Stadium as we know it before all the renovations. What's the risk in your mind of the Jayhawks getting too caught up in everything external and not focusing in on the actual game?
I say it's low. I feel like this team knows, that they need to bounce back from this Texas Tech game. And Lance talked about how focused and processing, processed well they were on Sunday when they practiced. He said he was impressed by that. I asked him actually, how do you kind of keep the nerves and the anxiety out? And he was like, well, they should be anxious. They should play loose. They should be out there playing their best football because in a sense, it's like you got nothing to lose, right? You've already lost 14 times to these guys. So, they're down to the third string quarterback potentially. So they should really come out with, yes, we want to win this game, but there is an opportunity here to close the gap. And they've talked about, not skipping steps, not, going from A to D. And, I think another thing this year is whether it's a win or a one-score loss, I think that's a big sign of progress for Kansas because they haven't had a one-score game since 2018 against Kansas State, and that was before Lance was around.
All right, Shrees, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a big-time game. Before that, though, we have a big-time basketball game tonight. You can find Shrees' work on social media at SHRE98. You can find his work at the KC Star, reporting on both men's basketball and football. Shrees, we appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on with us and maneuvering around the schedule to get us in this week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
There goes Shrees Latta. I don't think there has been, I mean, it's an obvious statement. Even last year, like there hasn't been a Sunflower Showdown football game we've been more excited about since I've been here, since I've been in this part of the world. So I'm jacked up for that. You get the late kick, you get all the things, the window, the national audience, all of that stuff. And Tommy, you get two coaches that probably going to be in the mix for that A&M job. Let's talk about that next. I think they're both in the mix. This is butt puckering time for KU and K-State fans with that A&M job open. We'll talk about it. Sports Daily rolls on right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Tommy, Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here. Jad Chambers producing. Tommy, Leipold and Kleiman are going to be candidates for this A&M job. They're both mentioned by all the people that follow this, one or the other or both. They both are good fits, and that's the kind of job that can lure anybody away at any point. They lured away Jimbo Fisher from Florida State after he won a national championship there. I'm concerned, and I don't know the way A&M's going to go with this. You know, Elko makes sense because he spent time there, but he's also connected to Fisher. So do they go that route? I don't know, man. I know you're downplaying that these guys are coming from the Big 12, but they are literal perfect fits. Both of them are. And A&M is going to get anybody they want.
I just don't see A&M going that direction because they can get anybody that they want.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
You know, I know that Dan Lanning said that he was going to stay at Oregon, that he's not interested in going anywhere, so he's off.
I don't think Dan Lanning would go.
He's off the table. I think that they're going to want somebody like a Lane Kiffin type, or a Mike Elko type, somebody with connections to the SEC. I have a hard time believing that either one of those guys will be seriously pursued by A&M. I think they might interview. They might get an interview. But, I mean, I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen for either one of them.
Look, and these are hypotheticals, and K-State and KU fans don't get all up in arms on this. This is a compliment to both of these guys in the programs they're running right now. I mean, as much as anything else, I think as we look at it, let's say A&M does want one of them. Do you think they're both in a position to turn a job like that down?
Probably not. Probably not. I mean,
that's terrifying
I
part.
don't think that this is a Leipold or Kleiman deciding to stay at Kansas or Kansas State situation. Like, that's not the way that I see this.
I get what you're saying.
I see it more of, I'm not sure A&M is going to go that direction. If they decide to go after Kleiman or Leipold, I think it's unlikely that they do. But if they do, yeah, at that point, I think that you called it butt pucker mode before the break. I would get into butt pucker mode at that point, but I'm not there yet.
I think it's time to pucker. I think it is. Lanning is the only slam dunk, right? That would be the guy. And if he's not it, Elko may be it, but do you distance yourself from the Jimbo Fisher time if you're A&M? Possibly.
He's had a lot of success at Duke, and that's a tough place to win.
He makes a lot of sense. Don't get me wrong. Lane Kiffin is a bit of a retread. If they wanted the right coach, they would go after one of these guys, because at A&M, like, all the flair and like, you don't need any of that at A&M.
Right.
You need program builder, culture guy, coach, first and foremost.
It's also a program that could drop $15 million to bring in Urban Meyer if they wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're a lot like Texas in the sense that they do have, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, like, they do have a higher standard ethically than some schools that might be willing to do that for Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer has indicated he doesn't want to do anything. Look, the reality is, and this is the bottom line is, A&M and Michigan State are very, 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 very different jobs and different situations. You don't know if you're going to be able to keep up in recruiting at Michigan State. You will keep up. Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher have recruited and had top classes every year, forever. It's going, that part of it, it doesn't take care of itself, but it kind of takes care of itself at A&M. If A&M wants the right coach, they're going to go find a great football coach that's a culture guy. And the state of Kansas has two of them. And I do think it's butt pucker mode. And you better hope that they want somebody else, because that's a job that's hard for anybody in the country to turn down. And it's open, and it's open early.
Yeah, I'm not there yet with either one of these programs being concerned about either one of the coaches leaving. I'm just not. I think it's a non-factor, because I think that A&M is going to go a different direction. They need to make a bigger splash, and there are bigger names than Leipold and Kleiman to make a splash.
They made their splash. It didn't work. I don't know. I got a bad feeling. 869-1240. We'll come back. Let's give away some movie tickets, Hunger Games tickets right now to the first caller, 869-1240. We'll be right back. Our appreciation to Dan Israel and Tria Slaughter for joining us here on the show today. Tomorrow will be a lot of fun because we'll be talking about that KU Kentucky game and continuing to look ahead at the Sunflower Showdown. We'll hear from Chris Kleiman today. Coming up on the network today, Jim Rome at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Zach Gelb from 4 to 6. You've got the Terry Nooner Show at 6 o'clock, the Paul Mills Show at 7 o'clock, and the Chris Lamb Show at 8 o'clock. Busy night for the coaches here on KFH. We'll do it again tomorrow. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers. We'll see you then.